How many people got snow overnight? How many people think that that was a good thing? Oh, there have to be a few. Anyway, welcome. And today our topic is going to be basically the emotional underpinnings of problem relationships with money or finances. And that can play out in one of two ways, either depriving yourself or more likely expressing it through problematic buying or acquiring in another way. Okay, so we're going to do a small recap, just a short recap of how we finished last week's podcast for new people. So how does your family of origin or the family that was most influential to you, how does that influence your money, your spending, your acquiring or not behaviors? It's pretty fundamental that events can happen in your family, in all of our families of origin, that predispose us to having money problems as an adult, all right? And these events, these circumstances can set in motion a chain of circumstances that are fundamental. They underpin either insecure or unhealthy relationships with money. And money can be assets. It can be the way you think about items being an opportunity or being a device to give you something or prevent you from some negative impact. So I want you to think of money generally, all right? Not just as cash in your hand or funds on your credit card, although it certainly is those as well when it goes wrong. Some of those experiences that I just referred to that are highly influential, but not exclusive to this list, are some form of childhood trauma. So losing a parent early in life and maybe the resulting financial situation for the family was much more insecure. It could be having both parents, but having a financially insecure childhood where the repeated message was, we don't have enough, we don't have enough, we don't have enough, you have to be careful, you can't have. Could be the other extreme as well. There are no limits. I'm not going to give you myself, my time, my attention, which is what you really need as a child. Your approval as a parent to a child, all right? And so here's another gift. Here's a prepaid credit card. Here. And this thing becomes a replacement. Not really well received in the beginning, but if it's the best you're going to get, as a child, you learn to live with it. You may have had parents who had problem relationships with money. We, in the absence of knowing what to do, we model what we saw. All right, that's where we start. Sometimes that's where we remain. If we don't take responsibility for acknowledging three things, folks, what are they? What do I need? Where is it? And how do I get enough of it to make the difference? All right. And if money isn't it, or that expense account isn't it, or using every child who is older than you's things before you get anything new, whatever it is, all right, what do you need today? Where is it? And how do you get enough of it to make enough of a difference? Doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be enough. You may have listened to parents, little kids in bed and you're trying to sleep and your parents are downstairs. What are they doing? As parents do, they're arguing. All right, parents argue. This is no surprise to anyone. What do they argue about most? All together now? Money. or the different relationship each of them had to money. Might not even have been a deprivation. It might have been one is as tight about money as a locked door, and the other one is there are no holes barred. And that gap in between, conflict. And you're witnessing it. There you are. At the time when you're supposed to be relaxing, settling in, falling off to sleep, the last thing you hear is all right. And maybe that was a chronic thing. Maybe they argued with you about money and your relationship, your developing relationship with it. The other thing too is we all develop, healthy or not healthy or somewhere in between, our own personal innate preferences. What do we think is worth an expenditure or bringing home, especially if it's a great price, especially if it's free? All right. It's an opportunity, right? It's and then what I call the hockey stick handling logic sets in, and we start working that puck to the goal of, what's going to make sense here for me to bring this thing to access this opportunity. But we do it with tunnel vision. We do it without an understanding and an appreciation of the larger context of our life. How many other projects do we have that are great opportunities, right? How much time, energy, focus, and truly intent do we have to move forward with this great opportunity? Are we going to live long enough? All right, when tomato soup goes on sale and we buy flats of it, are we going to live long enough? Is our daily appetite really going to be that heavily tomato soup focused, or whatever replaces my example of tomato soup? All right. I say that because for some reason, tomato and mushroom soup are highly valued when you're buying flats. Some of my clients have told me this, more than one. Who knew? So the other thing too, I mentioned last week that is true is children primarily feel events, okay? They experience them kinesthetically. They feel it emotionally. They feel it in their little bodies. And sometimes that inner child in you that had to any small degree, anything that set you up for maybe not the most productive relationship with money and finances or found opportunities, maybe that's that vague, indescribable little squeegee sense that you have about, should I not? Am I comfortable? Should I? All right, listen to it, because we do it, each and every one of us, in the ways that especially we have unfinished business with our past. We do carry that inside us, our inner child. I do really strongly believe that there are parts of us that remain unresolved, and they rest in our inner child. And they probably rest at a feeling level, or when a feeling has hung around, a negative feeling, a problematic feeling has hung around long enough, in my clinical experience, it starts to fester. It doesn't become better. It becomes unresolved, becomes bigger, it becomes itchier, it becomes something that starts making itself known. Maybe that's why you're here today. All right. Okay. So when children feel these events, these traumatic, these problematic, this conflict, they don't really understand the explanation that would have helped them put that conflict, that argument, both positions of their parents or somebody else, in a context that would help them then to understand and not carry it around as a worry, as a concern, as a, oh, we're poor. All right. And now today, that can get translated into trying to quiet it. How do we try to quiet it? By little available jolts of joy, all right? Particularly during COVID, but not exclusive to COVID, because so many of our other ways are not wise, or we put our life in our own hands by trying to access them, or they're just plain not available. Hugs from people who aren't part of a concept in the 21st century, your bubble. Because as if your bubble could ever contain enough people to meet your social needs adequately, or your emotional needs. Maybe those very people. I know in my life, I've got one daughter and one son, and my son is hunkered down at his place with his children, and my daughter is way out on the West Coast. We used to get together every few months. I'd fly out or she'd fly in. I haven't seen my daughter in practically 2 years, because we were beginning to be overdue for our last kind of get together when COVID set in, and it's just not safe. All right. Remember too that as a child, if any of these things were true for you, or heaven forbid, hopefully not, right now as an adult, you're creating these situations for your children. Remember, all right, that children usually have little or no control over events, and that makes them a whole lot more vulnerable to their impact, right? Children depend on their parents for emotional support and physical survival. Your children do. We did as children. And we experience it that way, because that goes back to almost the reptilian brain part of ourselves as infants, where when we cried and expressed distress, which now is socially unacceptable as an adult, you try standing in the middle of a room and wailing. It is not well received, all right? But it is our primal response. And as a child, we did that to say, I need something, because every time we needed something, we perceived it as our life was in jeopardy. And we waited for that permanent, that long-term sustainable person to come to us. Oh, there they are, I'm going to be okay. Oh, there they are, I'm going to be okay. And a part of us as a child, that inner child inside us, to the extent we have unfinished business with anything surrounding or involving money, all right, we still have a physical response, that kind of clench, that expression of distress, hopefully not to the point of panic. And when the emotional, that you're going to be okay, come on, let me pick you up. Who's going to pick you up? Who picks you up? Not literally, perhaps, but even figuratively. Who picks you up now? Right? We all need somebody to pick us up and tell us when we can't get there ourselves 100%. Who's your best friend? Who's your partner? Who is that person? Because when physically or emotionally it doesn't happen, all right, the child build their dependence needs, the reliability that their dependence needs. And don't kid yourself, even as adults, to some extent, we all still have them, all right, dependence needs. They're not being met. How are you getting them met now? Excuse me. Are you getting them met through online shopping? I know every time I have a problem, Amazon is my best friend. Every time I have a business problem, Amazon is my best friend. All right, because why? because like my loving parents, it comes right away. All right. If I have a big need, it comes right away. Am I abusing online shopping? I don't think so, but I'm doing a whole lot more of it because I don't have to wait. There's the key. I don't have to wait. If I had to go to the store and make the effort, find the time, expend the energy, suffer the lineups, I might rethink it. I might improvise more often. I find myself not doing that anywhere near as much as I would have. Why? It's right there. It'll be here tomorrow. The need is met. I convince myself it's legitimate. Some of you, with some of the examples I have, might have a different opinion. All right? It's right there. It's available. I have the need and I can get it met easily. Just keep an eye on it. When I started to notice that pattern a little bit, because I never bought online, ever. Sorry, I'm going to take that out of the recording. So, but I noticed that, a little more likely, I've set some measures in place so that I too can walk the talk of when I act, it's a considered act. It's not an impulsive act. All right? Okay. The other thing that can happen if this happens as a child to you is that those concerns can interrupt the child's ability to trust their parents to take care of them. And when a child has interrupted attachment, this is not a good thing. All right. Now, when I am not talking about every whim of the child being indulged, I'm talking about that I can trust them. I can trust them to take care of me. And when I can't, as a child, fear and insecurity become a low level. You know that dysthymia we talked about way back? That low grade depression and anxiety, this fear and insecurity can become a low level emotional, even a physical symptom. All right. Within the child, within your inner child, still who remains with you. And it continues to grow and flourish in an unwanted way in adulthood. Because now we can add layers of complexity to it as an adult. Our logic can become more complex. Is that translating itself? Because I can't tell you how many of my clients tell me that for them, this or something very much like this has converted itself to grab every opportunity when it's going. All right. Not just when the opportunity actually meets their needs. They don't even stop to ask themselves, does this meet my need? It's, oh, that's too good to throw out. Oh, what a great price. Never going to get it for that. It wasn't even on the shopping list for the next decade, but you're never going to get it at that price again. You know, I could buy a batch of them. I could buy like the business is going out of business. I'm going to buy all of this type of thing, and I'm going to then sell it for a profit. Logically, theoretically, not a bad idea. And for most of us, it should remain an idea because you miss the next step, folks, when you tell yourself that. What's the truth? How much time, energy, and focus do you actually have? Do you actually want to give that thing? Really? You don't have enough to do? You don't have other ways that you could enrich your life? Now you're going to go into business? Is it actually going to get done? Because if it isn't, it's just an idea. Let it pass. Okay, if you can't deliver on it, if you have any concern about delivering on it, Take a deep breath and let it pass. And consider if it was a good idea today, no matter how much of it is gone, by tomorrow or the next day, it'll be an even better idea then when you're sure that you have the intent to follow through. The other thing too that fear and insecurity can create is it can create a way for that child to speak up within us now as adults. That unresolved part, when we see an opportunity, that child can be part of the energy that speaks up and says, oh, look at the possibility. Look what we can do. We could make some money. We'd be better off. The other thing too that it can do, it can reward us. All right. We can actually voice over the voice of the child as an adult, and we can start telling ourselves, look how enterprising I am. How clever that I got that at such a great price. I didn't know I wanted it. I didn't know I needed it, but aren't I smart? All right, look how clever I am. You can prove yourself or try to prove or tell yourself you're proving yourself. How practical you are. You choose whatever word you would superimpose over enterprising, clever, smart, practical, that you say to yourself when you take advantage of an opportunity that does not really truly express any current need you have. It's just an opportunity. Never going to get it at that price again. When you begin to prove yourself by getting an overabundance of whatever that unbeatable price is, you're actually accepting substitutes for what you really need. And you're probably also giving yourself a lot of work figuring out where its permanent place when you get it at home is going to be, other than to create clutter. And when I say clutter, all right, I want you to say 2 words to yourself every time I say clutter. Clutter, chaos, clutter, chaos, clutter, chaos, clutter, chaos. Because it doesn't take very long until a little bit of clutter creates functional chaos, disruption and chaos. And you carry every little bit of it around here in your head. Is anybody overwhelmed? Is anybody feeling that they can't think as clearly as they used to? It's the clutter in your head. It's all the things you're carrying, some of which are represented by what you have brought into your environment. All right? Sometimes, often, in the form of an overabundance of opportunities that didn't pay off, frankly. They cost you, but they go on costing you. There's no problem. I want to say there is no problem with buying something at an unbeatable price. The problem arises when we don't actually need those things. We either already have an adequate supply, and yet we grab even more and more because it's too good to miss. And somehow, does it make you feel safer and more prepared? For a minute it does, until you go down and you look at your stash as you're adding the next thing that was too good to miss to your pantry, your storage, your whatever you call it. All right. Quite often too, whatever type of thing fits that category, the buying leads to waste, which is almost for sure exactly what you set out to avoid. I have not, in 19 and a half years, I have never once heard anybody say to me, I bought it to waste it. Oh, it's so much fun. Oh, it feels so good to have a basement, shelves full of food I'll never eat, stuff I'll never use. I feel so good about myself. All right. The buying leads to waste. Why? We have so much already. We sometimes have to, there's no room to keep like things with like things so I can see what I actually have. All right. What do I do with it? I find another place to stash it. I start stuffing. Oh, I've got a place there. I got a place there. We could go in the garage. We could go in the garage and we could put it up on top of the shelves. But when you're thinking about it, you're not going to remember there's anything up there until it'll kill you if you eat it. Or it's so past its excellence, its attractiveness. It died, whatever it is, or it's forgot about it. Why? Because if you can't store like things with like things, you are on a path somewhere you don't want to be. Whatever you do, face the truth at that point. I don't care whether it's clothing in your closet, whether it's shoes in your, wherever you're keeping all the shoes, or it's food, or it's anything else. If you can't keep like things with like things, you're on a path somewhere you do not want to be. You are undermining your intent. You'll forget it. You'll lose it. You'll do something, but you will not find it. And if you do find it, I will bet you dollars to donuts, you won't find it in time. All right? Do yourself a favor. What do I need? What need am I expressing? What do I need? Where is it? And how do I get enough of it to make a difference? And I will, here's a fourth, I will accept no substitutes. I will do without until I find exactly what best meets the need I'm expressing. Because why? Because you're worth it. You are worth not accepting any substitutes for what you most need. And what you most need, it's like my dad said, okay? The truth isn't complicated. It doesn't take a lot of words to express it. It's simple. The truth is simple. What is your simple truth about what brought you to this podcast today? What's your simple truth? It may be slightly different for each and every one of the 37 people here. Okay, it may be. Allow it to be. Yes, you're part of this community, but you're also an individual with your own little take on it. Please invest in yourself. Put down the credit card, put down the checkbook, put down the whatever. Put it down. All right, put it down, put it away. And start investing in yourself. What is your simple truth today? What do you need? Now, beside what you need, where is it? What's your best guess about where it is? Probably can come up with 5 different ideas of where it is or how you could express it to yourself without buying anything. Love the cat, Suzanne. her buddy's on her shoulder. I love it. Love it. And how do you get enough of it to make a difference in your life? How do you get enough of it? If you're not sure, what I'd like you to do is send me an email. All right. And I mean this, Elaine.Birchall, like the tree, BIRCHALL @hoarding.ca. Send me an email and tell me as simply as you can what's getting in the way of you getting what you know you need. And give me a heads up though. Give me a heads up with Where do you believe it is? And I'll do my level best to answer all your emails, all right, and give you some ideas based on my life, but also based on the lives of all of the people who come to me for help. They have found success and more satisfaction, all right? And together we can create, maybe Chantel had a great idea, and that is to create a billboard. If that would help, let's start opening a forum where people can share ideas, not give advice, but share their experiences with what has worked, to what degree. Even a baby step forward is better than stalled or feeling that you're stalled. Okay, let's do it. Let's do it. All right. So the other thing too is, we're talking about parents and significant others. If your parents didn't have the ability or simply didn't find a way to relay a message of safety during stressful times, ask yourself, is that one of the reasons, one of the underpinnings, all right, that have left you with a long-standing insecure feeling about life being safe? I know I didn't always believe this, probably because I didn't have to, but in my work, one of the things, I remember one time being at a forum, and a young woman, she was First Nation, and I wonder whether it came from her fundamental beliefs. And I heard it, and it just rang so true. She said, having trust that the universe, our collective energy, all right, will send you what you need when you need it, in the order you need it, although sometimes you disagree with that, frankly. If you're awake and listening, all right? And I struggled with that. I thought, gee, that's a really great concept. Then I started to encounter it, and I thought, whoa, where was I? Where was I that I didn't realize how true this is? And I think in one of the past podcasts that I did, I'm just going to give you the Reader's Digest version of it because it's a bit of a long story. I had a family that were they needed they need a lot of equipment and supplies and household things. Their two children were being returned to them by Children's Aid. They'd been in care. And I had an elderly man, and just so sad. He had to get rid of his pet. He was living in an apartment that his son owned, and he hadn't really allowed his son in to see the condition of it. And he was having multiple accidents. In fact, his mental health and certainly his physical safety was at risk. Cut to the chase. On one Saturday, these people were heavily kind of in my mind, and I was kind of fussing and worrying about, where am I going to get free stuff? Where am I going to get free stuff? Because nobody had any money. And in one Saturday, my first client was a woman who had lost her son probably 21 years before. Her mental health had bottomed out, and her child had been taken into care and had been fostered by another family member. So he remained in her life, but not under her care. But he wasn't taken until he was about 5 or 6. And we were working through in her basement, which was quite an endeavor. And we got behind a wall of things. Lo and betide me, there were a whole host of children's furniture and toys and an actual organizing unit for children's toys. And she said, I think I've held on to these too long. I'm ready to let them go. And I looked at her and I thought, am I hearing things? Because that was my internal voice. Like, I wonder whether she'd think of giving these to my other family. And so I told her about the story, and she said, absolutely. And we had about 3 carloads full of stuff that I delivered to the other family. We were doing a blitz the next week with the family, and we set them up, and it was unbelievable. My second client had this family room that there wasn't any room for any family in. And they decided that they had this lazy boy couch with a chaise at one end. And the husband and wife stood there and they said, well, one of these 2 pieces has to go because there isn't room. It's blocking the exit. And I in my internal voice, because I can't say this. Well, I've got a client who needs that one. In my internal voice, I'm saying to myself, oh, please let it be the chaise. Oh, please let it be the chaise. Oh, please let it be the chaise. And the 2 of them looked at each other and said, I think it has to be the chaise. And I thought, I hope I didn't say that in my outside voice. So anyway, I took the chaise. I explained about this client who desperately needed a place to sit in his tinier, you can't swing a cat in, room in the seniors residence. And the odd thing was the piece of furniture had to be within a certain color scheme because of the ungodly color of the rug. And on top of that, he needed something that could cover his bed because he was very social, but the room it was not suitable to have his buddies in. And then his cat was returned to him because the cat wasn't managing that well in where it was being fostered and adopted out. So we got the cat back, and physically he wasn't able to clean the kitty litter. He couldn't bend for that length of time. And also he needed a lamp. And I wish I had time to tell you the whole story because it was like this unfolding of, okay, do you want to learn the lesson now, Elaine? Okay, that the universe does provide what you need when you need it in the order you need it. If you're awake and listening, is it time for you to learn that? They let the chaise go. The chaise was a perfect color. The person, and they had just gotten home with, I don't know whether you're aware of a diaper genie for diapers. Well, there's such a thing as a kitty litter genie for kitties. They had just gotten home from I don't know where, and they had bought a duplicate of one that they realized they already had. And because it was such a great idea, they bought a second one and didn't realize it. And they were ready to let it go to this client of mine. And I thought, oh, you know what? 2 strikes. I wonder if it's possible. And the wife said, is there anything else you need for him? And I said, well, he does need a bed cover. And I said, because, it's one room, right? And a tiny bathroom. And he'd like to be able to return social invitations in this seniors residence. And I said, but the thing is, the rug is an ungodly shade of green. And so he's pretty macho. For an old guy, he's pretty macho. It can't be kind of like flowery. I don't mean to be picky. So she opened the ottoman in front of the couch, and she had 4 coverlets in there, one of which was an ivory background with a fern pattern. What's the chance, folks? All right. I offer this idea to you because I had to bump my head royally on it. And then on the way out, I said the one thing he could bring with him was his roll top desk. That's about the only thing. And she said, does he need a lamp? And I went, okay already. I believe. Okay, enough. I can't stand any more of this luck. So I just offer you that story and the truth of it, in case you need something or you're in a position to make somebody else's need possible by sharing. The one thing you don't get when you share something, your abundance, all right? Sometimes you don't get the pleasure or the satisfaction of seeing the face of the person who's going to benefit from your generosity. And I have to tell you, I wish confidentiality wasn't such an issue, but it is. That I know in my practice, I've had 2 storage sheds built for the generosity of people, because I can guarantee you, if somebody says to me, I need this, sometime within 2 to 3 weeks, if I send it out to the universe by just saying, I know somebody who needs this, if you know anybody or by any chance, I swear within 2 to 3 weeks, it has come full circle. So I think it's a small price to pay not to see the pleasure on the face of the person who's going to benefit from your generosity, but know that it's there. Okay. So moving along. The other thing too, one of those childhood experiences can be even more serious. And that's childhood trauma. All right. So where there's actually been a financial, let's say, certainly problem, perhaps addiction, trauma is a very likely underlying influence. And it's widely accepted in the field of trauma treatment that childhood trauma, whether sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, extreme neglect, predisposes a person, all right, to counterproductive, sometimes addictive behaviors. So a child who's abused or severely neglected develops defense mechanisms, defense strategies. Why? To avoid the residual feelings and the emotional pain from that injury. And these self-protective strategies include self-medication of some sort. And they can include accumulation of things where finances, even temporarily, all right, even temporarily are a problem. Now, I don't say that it necessarily has to be shopping. It could be acquiring in some other form, opportunistic acquiring, having a friend who says, oh, I'm getting rid of all these things. And so rather than, like most people, having a look to see if there's anything that is useful to you and that you were actually looking for, or you directly know somebody for sure who has recently said, I need da 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 da, and there it is. All right. I don't say that it just has to be about money. That's why I asked you in the beginning to expand the definition of money to opportunity. It really is about anything that comforts or pleases. It has that satisfying effect on the pleasure centers of the brain, because that deficit alters our brain chemistry, particularly abuse, neglect, severe stress, prolonged, persistent stress in periods of our life when we were formative, we were really just taking shape. All right. It does alter our brain chemistry, and it can give us a heightened need for relief. Maybe not all the time. Maybe we go through episodes where you have a high need for pleasure, or you have a high need for whatever form that relief takes. And so proving yourself, how clever you are, how resourceful, how enterprising, all right, you are, can be a good way to do that. You can say a lot of very genuinely positive things. The only problem is, if it doesn't actually meet your need, all of those other things that could be true are of absolutely no use to you. All right? They're not appropriate to the context of your need. They're not appropriate to the context of your need. And why? Why are we talking so much about money or credit or resources? Why? Let's not kid ourselves. Money and financial resources are fundamental to survival. They're not enough for survival, for a balanced survival. And, it is true that money can't buy happiness, but let's not kid ourselves. An adequate amount of money can avoid a lot of misery. All right. It can head off a lot of misery and a lot of worries. So money becomes equated to mental, emotional, physical safety and security. They are like balancing acts in our life, in our mind. Right? It can also trauma, neglect, persistent stress in childhood can predispose you to use your money and resources also in impulsive ways. When you're bored. Bored is not a comfortable feeling. All right. Bored can be the precursor to some other deteriorating mental health conditions. And if you've ever had those experiences of low-grade depression or major depression, if you live with some level of anxiety, or you're in a state right now because of COVID that you are in some elevated or new experience with anxiety, money and what it can do, resources, accumulation, and what it can give you, even just for a minute, even just as the package arrives, sort of like Christmas morning, only it's always in a brown box. All right. It's an alternative to living with that boredom, living with that anxiety, and learning how to deal with it. So I want to quote here, I want to credit a few sources that I have taken pieces of information out of their writings and have incorporated it for the purposes of clutter, whether it's mental clutter, physical clutter, hoarding. All right. As our other experts, Teresa Covert, I want to credit Carolyn Foster, Carl McBride, in Obsessions with Buying, Caesar Lincoln in Shopping Addiction, The Ultimate Guide for How to Overcome Compulsive Buying and Spending, and Sally Pallian in Spent, Break the Buying Obsession, Call and Discover Your True Worth. All right. They and I have observed the following. As an adult, we're more susceptible to either fear, material security and comfort, or the fear of it or pursuing it vigorously. We're more susceptible. And the higher our need, the higher our vulnerability, the more we gravitate to whichever of those two is more organic for us. The fear of financial security and what it might cost you in independence or something else, or the vigorous pursuit of it. All right. So I certainly find that in my practice, it seems to be suspicion or defeat with the likelihood that I'll be financially secure. And so it creates a targeted, like a pinpoint pursuit of all and any manners in which I can stretch my dollar, stretch my financial capability. And sometimes, quite often, that's through other means, buying up things and trying to sell them on eBay, insisting in order to clear up clutter that is disruptive to your day-to-day life. You have to try to sell it first, and then it hangs on, and it really just becomes another activity that doesn't happen. You're so focused on needing some money back. Fair enough, but it's always a better idea to decide at what point in the pricing of this item, if I do have to try to sell it, at what price do I stop trying to sell it and I solve my problem and I let it go? All right. What is that dividing line? Because when you ask a certain price, almost for sure, you're not going to get it. All right. So you be in charge. You make a deliberate decision. If I don't get this much for it, this is the dividing line, then I will donate it. All right. All right. The other thing that happens in the case of someone who fears security and comfort because they're suspicious of it, it's not, they understand the deprivation. They know that dance. They know how to live with it. They know how to sacrifice. They oftentimes lower their standard and their quality of life along with that compromise. But they tend to repeat early insecurity and trauma through avoidance of and fear of material security and comfort. All right. And the corollary to that is, as adults, then they repeat passivity as a coping mechanism. They just let things wash over them. All right. And they become increasingly overwhelmed because that's familiar. They know that dance. And they fail to see how, as adults, they have more going for them. They have more opportunities. They have more ways to engage safely or to learn how to do that and practice new skills. Are you doing that today? Are you remaining passive? Are you staying passive to opportunities and solutions that would actually meet or help you start to meet some of the needs that bring you to this podcast today? And is remaining passive, is that your best choice currently? I question passivity. There is a place for it. But I question it because by repeating passivity as the injured survivor of something, all right, you remain unable to separate from whatever put you in that position, whoever. All right? You're repeating an old pattern that may not be necessary today. Whoever abused you, neglected you, deprived you, or lovingly just didn't have it in them to give you what you needed as a child in the way of stability. And I'm not talking about bounty. I'm just talking about adequate safety and security. You remain unable to separate from them if you stay in the same stance that worked. Because that dance, in that dance, they are your partner. Choose a better partner for today. The context of your life is different. In fact, Why not try to be your own partner in this journey? You can do that by learning. You can do that by running little tiny manageable experiments with yourself, trying on new skills. I'm going to suggest you go back to the podcast on boundaries and limits and start there. All right? Boundaries and limits are where it starts. Identifying your needs. Sometimes it feels so pointless, so overwhelming. You stop asking yourself because you don't think there's any point in it. There is a point. You can do this. And you are worthy. You're worth. You're entitled to your share of happiness and satisfaction. All right? Break the attachment you have. Set it aside. That experience with early insecurity and powerlessness. You are an adult. You are not powerless. Your feelings of powerlessness or inadequacy, not knowing how to, not being enough, they are feelings only, and feelings aren't facts. They are just the meaning that you're applying to the experience you're having. They are not facts. You were born worthy of your fair share of the good things in life, and those are not anything you can buy. They're the gifts you can give yourself so that you are stable and you're able to make considered decisions that meet your need today. As we finish this podcast for the day today, I want you to write down today, what is your biggest need? Do it now, right now. What is your biggest need today? And when you've done that, below it, I want you to write where you guess, even just guess. The answer is, what do I need? Where is it? Where, even if it's just a guess. Where is it? And the next, the third, even if it's just a guess, what's one idea to start a baby step, a tiny baby step? Maybe not even a step, maybe just leaning in that direction. Okay. How do you get enough of it to make the beginning of a difference? Just to give yourself hope that it is doable. Where is it? How do you get enough of it? One tiny baby step. Okay, everyone, we're going to end for today, and we will pick this up next week, and we will talk about a number of other issues having to do with our relationship to money, opportunities, anything that can convert into something that will meet our needs. All right? Because one of the fundamental relationships to chaos in our life and clutter in whatever form it takes is our relationship to that thing. So if it's clutter, physical clutter, our relationship to things, to our things, fundamental underpinning. If it's chaos, our relationship to whatever behavior or choice we're making that's creating that chaos, or even if it's not even creating it, if it's adding to it. Sometimes it's the tipping point that we've gone past. I wish you a wonderful week. I will see you next week. Thank you all for being here. It's great seeing your smiling faces and your pens, writing down your thoughts. And don't forget to send me those emails. All right? You take care, everybody. Make it a good one. Bye.